You don't spend because you're careless, you spend because you need to feel real. Every unplanned purchase is a silent scream for validation, a symbolic gesture saying, I deserve this, even if I can't afford it. Financial self-sabotage isn't a logic problem. It's an emotional ritual, a looping cycle of guilt, compensation, and silence. You feel inadequate, seek relief by buying a version of yourself you wish were true, and then punish yourself with guilt and renewed effort. This isn't disorganization. It's a survival mechanism for a fragmented identity. This video won't teach you how to save money. It will show you why losing money often feels safer than losing the illusion of emotional control. The dominant advice says just get organized, cut expenses, change your habits. But no one talks about the symbolic hole those habits are trying to fill. Self-sabotage is treated like laziness when it's actually a desperate cry for belonging. Meritocracy fails because it ignores trauma. Coaching fails because it ignores the unconscious. And the system thrives on that. Because the more you fail trying to fix yourself, the more you believe the problem is you. But it's not. The real issue is the invisible cycle that turns emotion into impulse, impulse into debt, and debt into identity. And as long as you keep trying to correct it with surface-level techniques, you're feeding the very pattern you want to escape. You don't overspend out of stupidity. You overspend so you don't collapse. We're living in a culture where financial success is treated like math. But the real battlefield is symbolic. The card is just the surface. The purchase is just the tip. What's at stake is far deeper, your sense of self. Every time you hit buy now, you're trying to rescue a version of yourself that feels respected, admired, in control. But that version never arrives. And the hole keeps growing. Until you realize why this isn't about spending less, it's about facing the silence that keeps pulling you to spend. I tried organizing myself without touching the root. I made spreadsheets, canceled cards, read books, but only when I faced my need for recognition, my addiction to looking in control, did I see the truth. I wasn't financially undisciplined. I was emotionally colonized, and the system was funding my illusion, profiting from every symbolic relapse I called an impulse buy. Comment: I'm not disorganized. I've been programmed. The human brain wasn't designed to manage numbers. It was designed to manage threats. And in today's system, money has become the primary symbolic threat. Every time you face a financial decision, your brain isn't asking, does this fit my budget? It's asking, will this protect me from feeling invisible? That's why so many irrational decisions feel logical in the moment, because they're not decisions. They're emotional reactions. You spend to belong. You overspend to avoid disappearing. You go into debt to silence the existential panic of being forgotten, being less, having no proof of worth. Financial self-sabotage isn't dysfunction. It's a survival strategy in a social performance economy. This programming is installed slowly, through commercials that link success to consumption, social media that turn status into identity, and rags to riches stories where money is the reward for being a better version of yourself. Your brain learns, from an early age, that to have is to be, that to show is to exist, and that financial control equals strength. So when you lose control, the pain isn't logical, it's existential. You don't just feel like you made a mistake. You feel like you are a mistake. And to anesthetize that pain, you buy again. Start another cycle, and the system profits, not from your error, but from your desperate need to feel strong again. The market knows this. That's why the triggers are emotional, not logical. Limited time only. You deserve this. Last chance. These are symbolic commands, activating ancient parts of your brain. The same ones once used to decide between fight or flight. Now you fight by buying. You flee by clicking. You survive by splitting payments. And you die, slowly, every time you give your attention to an offer that promises more than it delivers. Self-sabotage isn't a lack of discipline. It's total alignment with a script you never chose. Comment: I'm not disorganized. I've been programmed. You're not getting into debt because you lack money. You're getting into debt because you lack inner silence. Because you don't know what to do with the pain of feeling insufficient, unseen, or stuck. In this system, debt becomes a symbolic testimony, a way of saying, "I'm still trying." Each installment is an emotional scar where you mark your effort to look like someone who's winning. The further you drift from your essence, the more you try to buy versions of yourself that appear acceptable. The credit card becomes confession, the statement a form of penance, and the cycle continues. Not because you're weak, but because the system designed a world where spending is easier than facing the emptiness inside. Self-sabotage is intelligent. It serves a deep purpose, to protect the emotional identity you've built. You grew up hearing that financially responsible people are strong, mature, successful. So every time you lose control, your brain doesn't see it as a mistake. It sees it as personal failure. And to escape that symbolic collapse, you buy something that restores the illusion that things are okay, that reaffirms your worth, your competence, your belonging. That's why behavior change doesn't work without narrative change. Because as long as your mind believes consumption is a shortcut to reclaim identity, every financial plan will be sabotaged from within. This isn't about money. It's about symbolic identity, about the desperate attempt to feel like someone in a world where no one feels enough. Every new debt is less about necessity and more about representation. You present yourself as someone who's taking care of themselves, rewarding themselves, allowing themselves. But behind the packaging, there's a suppressed scream. "I don't know who I am without this." The credit card statement isn't your enemy. It's your emotional narrative printed in numbers. And until you rewrite that story, you'll keep funding your own symbolic captivity. Comment: debt doesn't prove my existence, it proves my disconnection. Financial self-sabotage isn't a personal flaw. It's a system feature, a tool of psychic control that turns your impulses into profit. The current model doesn't want you to become truly financially literate. It wants you to keep trying, to keep failing with hope, to keep reading one more book, trying one more strategy, joining one more 21-day challenge. Because each new attempt silently confirms the problem is you, not the model. And as long as you keep deceiving yourself with surface-level solutions, you keep serving the very structure that weakens you. The market loves your guilt, because the guilty are easy to manipulate. The guilty don't question. They consume to redeem themselves. There's no more loyal customer than someone who feels they're in debt to themselves. And that debt isn't financial, it's symbolic. It's the gap between who you are and who you think you should be. A void cultivated by advertising, social comparison, motivational speeches, and feeds where everyone looks like they've got it together. In that symbolic vacuum, anything can be sold as salvation. And every time you give in, you reinforce the narrative. I need this to feel whole. What you're really buying is emotional forgiveness. As long as you believe the next purchase will reorganize you from within, you'll be a servant of illusion. Because it doesn't matter what you buy, the guilt returns, the emptiness returns, the debt returns, and the cycle begins again. It only ends when you realize there is no consumption-based solution to an identity-based problem. The peace you seek isn't in your banking app. It's in the silence you avoid, the trauma you deny, the story you repeat unconsciously. Self-sabotage is just the modern name for an ancient ritual, sacrificing yourself for social approval. Comment: the next purchase won't save me. You're not just sabotaging your money. You're protecting a version of yourself that learned to survive by feeling broken. Financial self-sabotage isn't just a behavior. It's an identity. You've become accustomed to being the one who tries, fails, starts over, promises, relapses. Because even in pain, there is familiarity. There is belonging. There is a story in which you're still the protagonist, even if it's a tragedy. That's why it's so hard to leave the cycle. Because deep down, you no longer know who you are without the struggle, without the pattern, without the inner war to prove yourself. Suffering became the invisible name you answer to in the mirror, and the system knows that. That's why it offers you solutions that keep your pain alive, in premium form. Prosperity courses, abundance mindset coaching, wealth gurus selling hope to emotionally exhausted people. None of it is designed to free you. It's designed to keep your wounded identity functional and productive, to keep you trying to become someone, without ever stopping to ask, what if I already am? Because if you realize you don't need to prove anything, the system loses symbolic profit. And markets don't survive on peaceful people. They survive on people in debt to their own existence. When you spend without needing, you're not chasing pleasure. You're trying to keep alive the version of yourself that expresses through lack. You buy as if saying, I'm still trying. As if reaffirming you still have hope, that you still might make it, that you still deserve attention. But that still is the cage. It's the contract that ties you to the narrative of incompleteness. True liberation begins when you dare to abandon that version. When you stop feeding the cycle, not with more effort, but with silence, with rupture, with deliberate absence. Comment, I am not this pain. I am the one who chooses to release it. Now it's you versus the final lie, that you must keep sabotaging yourself in order to feel alive. This is the moment to end the cycle, not with effort, but with truth. To unravel the belief that failure defines you, that debt represents you, that shame is part of who you are. All of that was implanted, learned, absorbed through emotional repetition. But it can be returned, uninstalled, dissolved through a quiet ritual of unprogramming. From this moment on, self-sabotage is no longer identity. It returns to what it always was, a symptom of a sick system. Close your eyes. Visualize all the versions of yourself you tried to buy. The strong ones, the healed ones, the successful ones you wore like emotional armor. Now let them go. One by one. Sit with the emptiness, the discomfort, the absence of narrative. That feeling of, who am I without this cycle, is real. And that's where healing begins. Because what remains when the performance ends is what was never for sale. Your presence, your clarity, your capacity to not react, to not fill, to not flee. That is real wealth. Being whole where once there was only repetition. You don't need more discipline. You need less deception. You don't need more control. You need more truth. And the truth is, you already know. You always did. You were just too busy trying to look like someone else. Today, the cycle ends. Today, you disconnect from the sabotaging identity. Today, you break the script and start writing in your own voice. No guilt, no debt, no performance. You are free. Comment, I break the cycle now. Share with someone else ready to end the war. Subscribe to continue this process of symbolic unlearning.